Coming up, a look at the budget and a whole lot more with one of the area legislators on this edition of Meet the Leaders in just a moment. Hi there, welcome to Meet the Leaders. I'm David Smith. Good to have you along with us today as we take a look at budgets. Now, this is something that you and I deal with on a regular basis in our own homes. What goes on in Hartford? Well, we're going to find out a little bit of one perspective anyway from Representative John Shaban, representing the 135th District, Easton, Reading, and Weston. It's good to see you, John. How are you?
How are you?
Things are chugging along up there, and the battling goes on.
Yeah, we're just starting to get into the heavy stuff now.
Well, the heavy stuff is very heavy indeed. We've got huge deficits that we're facing now. The governor has made some very deep cuts in lots of different areas, and geez, I don't know whether you know you're doing something right when nobody agrees with what you're doing or what.
Yeah, unfortunately, we've his proposals do make some serious cuts, and really the systemic budget issues or fiscal issues we've had for 5, 6, 10, 15 years are coming home to roost. There are no good choices left. There are no good choices left short of a major systemic change in the way we run our house, and the basic change that needs to be done is we need to decrease spending. I mean, we're going to increase spending again under his proposal. A couple of years ago it was 14, 15% for biennium. This year, it's going to be 6%, I think, is the proposal this year. So, we keep raising taxes, which we've done, and this proposal seeks to do it again. We keep increasing spending, and then wondering why are we out of money? Because we spend more than we make.
But then we've made these severe cuts. And so a lot of people are getting cut and feeling it very distinctly. Municipalities, while they're supposedly held harmless, if you're staying at the same budget that you had last year, your budget in the municipality doesn't stay at the same budget. So obviously you're going to be hit with more cost of the taxpayer. That's
right. Yeah, and there's going to be ripple effects in other areas too, because if you're going to cut funding for different programs or different, police, or you're going to charge more for state police, or you're going to, make different cuts or changes in the way things are funded. Yeah, the municipalities will be paid. Make no doubt, people who need help are going to go without. Municipalities are going to be impacted. This is the situation we're in, and I hate to be one of the folks who said, we were crying wolf, or I told you so. I hate either of those, but this is where we're at. While the other states in the region or the other states in the country are pulling out and some even thriving, we're not. We're not. We spend too much. We borrow too much. We've done the wrong things for too long, where frankly the folks that bring wealth and prosperity to the state have left or are leaving or downsized.
All right, what is the GOP coming forth with that is going to be less painful, more successful at generating jobs, and certainly more successful at generating revenue?
Right. Like I said, there's no good choices left anymore. I mean, for the last 2 or 3 budget cycles, we proposed a balanced, vetted budget proposal that was rejected.
What was that able to do that the governor's not able to do?
What it was able to do was shrink the size of government. And unless you're talking about reducing the size of government, shrinking your overhead, you're not having an honest conversation. That's just the facts.
Now, how are you doing that with union contracts and so forth being what they are?
Well, 4 years ago, what we would have done is probably what we proposed to do is not adopt the union contract that was adopted by the government.
But here it is.
So again, there you go. We're tied into it. There are legal ways to open up that contract. There's obviously going to be some opportunity to renegotiate parts of it. The easiest fix would be going forward, and this is something we've been screaming about for years, is going forward, let's have everyone do a defined contribution instead of a structured pension where the taxpayers in the state are paying for all of your retirement benefits. Let's, like in private sector, at least going forward, have folks contribute to their own.
So new hires.
New hires, at a minimum. I mean, right, because the folks have been working up in the state government for 20, 30 years. You're not going to change the deal on them. That's not fair. But the new hires, or relatively new hires, it has to get done because it's unsustainable what we're doing now. And what you're seeing now is people saying, oh, you know, we're reducing our budgets, you're hurting us. Yeah, it's because we have no money.
Realistic opportunity to reopen negotiations? Yes, no?
Realistic, I think there's always an opportunity to open negotiations. I mean, I do that in my day job. You know, you need the political will to do it. And unfortunately, that's one of the places we have to start. I mean, the other place to start, and we've been pitching this for years, is to start moving some of the services that are provided by state employees who get union wage or get union contracts, pensions, and health benefits to private sector. We have a sort of a dual delivery system in this state for a lot of services. You know, some hospitals, some family aid, structures and whatnot. A lot of that could get moved to the private sector, not-for-profits, or downsize the role that the government plays in it and increase the size that not-for-profits make. They charge less, they cost less, and the delivery is at least as good.
Environment is something that, needless to say, folks in Reading, Easton, Weston, and so forth really appreciate. That's why they live in those bucolic areas. Right. What kind of ideas have you got going forward on that? Yeah,
we've got a few things going. I mean, as you know, I'm the ranking member of the Environment Committee. I have an environmental law degree. It's one of the reasons I enjoy serving on that committee. I mean, we've got the main thing I think we're working on now, which should help, is we're sort of continuing our work on brownfield redevelopment. I mean, we passed a big bill, I guess it was 2 or 3 years ago, to kind of help people identify, make safe, and then redevelop brownfields. The governor, his brownfield czar, has actually done a very good job of helping developers realize what opportunities are there. Some help from the state, some help from legislation, liability protection, that kind of thing. So we're working with, I've pitched a bill with others to try and take some of the money that we were throwing at the First and Five program, and let's move that over to brownfield redevelopment, because that's, the way we're going to dig ourselves out of this economic crisis or sluggishness that we're in is development of small and medium-sized jobs, some light manufacturing, whatever. And the infrastructure's there, it's just laying fallow because of environmental issues. And we have them all around. I mean, there's one right up in my district, up in Reading, which has been the Georgetown project, which has been, for the most part, has been remediated, and we're trying to work our way out of that. But
well, that's been in the works for a long time. Are we seeing light at the end of that tunnel?
It's too soon.
It's a great opportunity sitting there for a long.
It is. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, the developers charged in there did a lot of good things in like 2007. 2008 happened. Things dried up and the project got derailed, but it'll happen. It'll happen.
And so many of the urban areas are those areas that have got those brownfields that are holding things back.
All up and down the river, yeah.
We optimistic that is the state going to have to team up with the feds as they typically do on these things, right?
Yeah, that and private money. The private money. I mean, the idea of the brownfield redevelopment structure that we put in place a couple of years ago was to let people say, all right, listen, I have a contaminated piece of property, or I own it, or I want to buy it. To enable them to work their way through it in such a way that they know what their expenses are, so they can borrow against it, they can sell it, they can finance it. I mean, one of the things we did last year is we actually made it easier to redevelop brownfields in increments by issuing incremental permits, as opposed to you got to redevelop the whole 800 acres.
Right.
Now you can do 10 acres, monetize that, do another 10 acres, monetize that, and it actually has enabled developers around the state to do the work and make some money and create some jobs and build some infrastructure.
Has enough time gone by and enough progress gone by to see how those things are working out, that sort of concept?
Yeah,
piecemeal?
I think the early results are promising. They are, because we've seen some good results in Stamford. I think there's a developer, I think it's in Stratford, that has taken advantage of that. Saying rather than have to invest a big chunk of money and hope that you get out at the end of the day, you can monetize it as you go. And
is the state helping to fund that remediation as well?
The incremental steps, not necessarily. I mean, there is some state funding for different projects, but the incremental steps is actually, I mean, it allows people to use private money and you get in, get out. Get in, clean, get out. Get in, clean, get out, which is good, because the state does have some money in the budget for brownfield cleanup, which is good. I agree with that. That's where we should be spending our money, among other places. So it's like I say, the early results I think are promising.
All right, promising some repair on transit and transportation. Going to talk about that and a whole lot more with John Shaban in just a moment. Stay with us. We're back on Meet the Leaders. David Smith here with you, and Representative John Shaban, 135th District, our guest. We've talked about a number of things, but ramp meters is something that people are starting to hear a little bit more about, and something that you and your committee are talking about. What does that mean, and how's that going to positively impact the flow of traffic? That's the key, of course.
Yeah, it's an idea I pitched in, and it's still in the hopper in varying forms, whether it's going to be a study or we actually try and do it, or just getting the conversation started. You've seen this down in New York. They've been used in the United States for over 50 years. Basically what it does is it regulates or throttles the entry onto highways like the Merritt, that's what my bill proposes, in such a way that what you don't get is a congestion wave. I mean, if, as you're driving down the Merritt, as the closer you get to Stamford, suddenly there's a wave of traffic, hitting brakes that ripples back through the traffic flow miles and miles, because there's too many people trying to get on in one or two spots. Mm-hmm. So what ramp meters do is they time entry to keep the flow moving, and this has been used around the U.S. for, like I said, over 50 years.
So what does it have? It has
it's
a
a
light
stoplight
system or
yeah,
whatever?
It's on the ramp. Go, stop, go, stop, and it's hooked to a computer. It's a laptop. It's a simple program, and all it does, it monitors flow, and then it times entry. And it's been used with success in New York. It's been used in Seattle. It's been used Louisiana, and it's a relatively cheap alternative.
Does it not back up the traffic on those ramps
It can.
and conceivably onto major roadways that feed those ramps?
It can, and
which could aggravate the situation on a local level.
That's right, and that's what the folks say. Well, what about that? Well, the program can accommodate those issues, and frankly, we've lengthened the on-ramp on the Merritt in some of those spots to let people queue up. Now, what I'm proposing to do is let's time it just during rush hour. I mean, obviously, when it's. For a couple of $1 million, you can do ramps that'll actually fix the problem, as opposed to a couple of $1 billion to add another lane, widen the easement. I mean, we've only used half of the Merritt easement, which is a lot of people don't know.
We're spending money like crazy, folks.
Yeah.
What the heck? Speaking of spending money, telephone poles, electric poles, and so forth, whoever they belong to, need replacing with great regularity. How are you doing on keeping those up to speed so that the next storm doesn't knock those down? Yeah,
the bill I think you're talking about is one I pitched in the Energy Committee, was in times of emergency, like a big storm. If my proposal is, if a crew gets to a pole and can fix a pole, they should fix the pole.
Okay.
Because as you probably know, poles are either owned by a telecommunications company or power distribution company. Sometimes a lot of them are co-owned. There's even some privately owned poles by different towns. And what ended up happening, and I saw this personally because I was talking to the crews, sitting on my street, saying, "What are you doing?" So we're trying to get across town. What about that pole right there? That's not ours. So if you fix the poles you can get to, rather than trying to circumnavigate down trees to fix your poles, we could actually speed recovery, and then you build back at a pre-approved rate.
Boy, the neighbors would be thrilled with that kind of a concept, one would think.
Oh, you can't imagine how many phone calls I got. Like, they're sitting at the end of the road doing nothing.
But they're not doing anything.
I'm trying.
You got a lot of work to do. Thanks so much for stopping by. We appreciate you spending some time with us here on Meet the Leaders.
Well, thanks for having me.
Representative John Shaban, 135th District. On this edition of Meet the Leaders, I'm David Smith, and that's all the time we have for this. We'll see you next time.